Hello and welcome to the Sac Off podcast. We are back once again talking about Kings basketball, and it's going to be a much better discussion because the Kings actually won some games. So that's going to make for some fun discussion this week. Lots of talk about Boogie and all the things that went on, telling Kings fan to relax. Going to be a fun show. Before we do that, we do just want to send our thoughts and prayers to Paris, and with all that happened there, just our thoughts and prayers are with you. So we want to start the show off with that. And now we will turn to our light, strange analysis of the Kings that we bring to you every Tuesday. So, Oscar, how did you feel about the Kings this past week?
So I guess like the Detroit game was weird. I guess that's the place to start with. It was weird because it's like I thought Detroit were better than that, but I think the Kings have the one thing with that game is we kind of seen Carl have like one game plan that he's wanted to go to. And we saw that a lot with the Detroit one where it was take away Drummond and Reggie Jackson. And that worked pretty well. Drummond got kind of going the second half of the game. But for the most part, I thought that game plan worked well. And then Boogie just went insane. And you can tell, I think it was by the Toronto game, he doesn't even need to shoot 3-pointers now. People are like Scola was closing him out on the perimeter. And then, so that's like incredible that he's already kind of getting that gravitas out on the perimeter. So he hit 4 from 5. Those trailing transition threes are just a sight to behold, and it just opens so much up for him. And it's like everyone always talks about like it's easy to build around Boogie, you just build spacing. But if he can space himself and then he brings his own center that he can beat off the dribble, it's just like such a incredible weapon. And he doesn't need to hit threes like the amount he is at the moment for that to be effective. So that's pretty. I mean, his shot chart's so wacky that at the moment it's like he's shooting a better click from above the break threes than he is from inside the paint, and like he's pretty bad from the mid range. So that'll probably even out. And then I guess this was like the last James Anderson game where he played 17 minutes, and then he did start the game after, but he hasn't played since. And kind of Ben McLemore has taken over. I think we'll talk about Ben more when we get to the other games. But yeah, I thought kind of Marco kind of still struggled. It was just basically the Boogie show. What was your thoughts from? I know you kind of want to talk about taking Boogie out at the end of the third quarter, because I don't think you liked that, did you?
I think that was during Brooklyn game because he had 21.
Oh, was that the Brooklyn? Okay, yeah. All right, I'm getting games confused. Okay, or should we talk? Because I don't even know if Boogie's been playing well, which is the strange thing. Like he's kind of struggled in the paint somewhat.
Yeah.
Like the Brooklyn game in particular, the first half. And it's been driving to the basket where he's been his most effective. Like we haven't really seen him. Maybe it's because he's been in the post less, and whenever he's in the post, he's getting doubles so quickly and he's passing out of double teams. So then it's kind of less evident his dominance in the post. I guess with this game, once Boogie started hitting those threes, Ilyasova was on him, and then we saw Boogie take Ilyasova into the paint and like back him up. So that's like another really good thing to see where Boogie's understanding the mismatch. So when a team doesn't want Drummond to be guarding on the perimeter, because obviously he's that's taking away from his forte of like affecting shots at the rim and rebounding. So then they switch Ilyasova on, and then Boogie's not just trying to shoot over Ilyasova, he's making advantage of the mismatch. He's taking advantage of both mismatches, guys who he can take off the dribble on the perimeter or smaller guys he can post up. So that, to me, that's like the exciting thing. He's like aware, and he's not just shooting 3-pointers just because he can. He's like picking the right spots too.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back. We mentioned because this was after the first game of the year. We mentioned that if Boogie, if he can make even one of these threes every week or two of these threes every week, that's going to cause defense to start going out there to give him attention there. And as you mentioned, that's when he'll be able to get the matchup he wants to drive inside. Obviously, I mean, he's been ridiculous. I mean, he is 16th in NBA in 3-point field goal percentage. And just for reference, the players around him now, obviously, Boogie's 13-29. Jordan Clarkson, Kevin Durant, JJ Redick, Stephen Curry. Yeah,
Curry's probably hit as many in one game as Boogie has the whole season. But I mean, but yeah, like the efficiency's like pretty good.
Yeah, and this ties in. I mean, so obviously the number is going to go down. Boogie's not going to be in a 3-point contest. It's just not going to happen.
But the interesting thing is because most of them have been in transition. So what that does is it means that the center or the power forwards can't just cover the paint. They have to wait for the trailer. So it does mean you get easier transition points as well. So, and we've even seen kind of those later games with those transition frees where Ben gets to the basket, then like whips it across court to Marco Bellinelli. There's been a couple open frees that way, so they're getting like it's good to see like transition frees be like quite a big part of the offense. I think the transition offense has got much better.
Yeah, I mean that's things like so Boogie's making about 45% from three right now. But I mean, so let's say the number goes around to 38% or whatever. But also as that goes down, I think a lot of averages. We've mentioned some of his struggles in the paint recently with the double teams. Teams start having to give him attention outside. He drives inside. And, I think that inside field goal percentage is going to go up. So it's all going to be good.
And I guess it's just like he's probably not like in his in top shape at the moment. I mean, he's playing big minutes, but I don't think he had like I don't think he was running before the Spurs game. So he's like the more he's playing and obviously having to play these big minutes whilst Darren Collison's out and Rudy Gay missing time, although he played big minutes against the Pistons, but I think he missed the Brooklyn game. But I guess this was the easy game. This was the game where it got kind of blown out early and then was kind of over. So yeah, I don't think there's much. I guess like the team starting to shoot better from the free throw line, which was kind of an issue early on in the season. So that's kind of like steadying itself, where they were pretty good at the free throw line early on, and they're doing really well off the boards as well. The Raptors were a pretty good team in terms of getting boards, and I think we were more productive than them, and we also out-rebounded the Pistons, and that's with like Drummond getting, I think he had like 16, but like I think like 6 of those were on 2 plays where he's just like constantly tapping the ball. So that kind of inflates his numbers somewhat, but to out-rebound those teams is pretty good. Was this after this game where George Karl, I think he talked about he needs to trust himself more to play Willie Cauley-Stein? What did you think of those comments?
George Karl is frustrating. I mean, I know he said he needs to trust himself more because he has this whole thing about trusting rookies. But I mean, how much difference have we seen in terms of playing comments?
And it's weird because like I think the best lineups have been with Willie Cauley-Stein, and I think he has the best like net ratio, like plus minus, and that's starting to. And he didn't play the last game because of a concussion, which I think he passed the protocol, so he won't miss any games. But so that kind of, at least that's like a reason why he didn't play the rest of the game. Where he did play 18 minutes against Brooklyn, and I guess in that game where you're trying to catch up a score, you maybe want another scorer when Rondo's going to be playing so many minutes. Maybe you can't afford to have. But I mean, Rondo and Willie Cauley-Stein have had pretty good offense together as like a weak side crasher when Rondo gets into the paint, and then can dump off to a Willie in the weak side. But I mean, I think this is kind of what we're expecting. But I guess the frustrating thing is we didn't think Willie Cauley-Stein would look this good, and so kind of in my mind I always thought, okay, he'll start around 18, 20 minutes, averaging that a game, and then get up to 24. Whereas really he should be playing 24, and then like Kufos be the main, like spell Boogie. That's kind of the way it should be, and I think you can play Cousins and Willie. Like, I think every minute you have Willie on the floor, you should have Cousins on the floor.
Agreed, wholeheartedly.
I mean, maybe you can play Willie with like a bench unit with Gay. I think you need to have like one of Gay and Cousins with Willie Cauley-Stein. But I mean, you probably want one of those two on the floor anyway most of the time. So that should really be an issue. Was there anything else from the Pistons game you wanted to touch on that kind of stood out to you?
No, I think that about coverage. I think more of our discussion is going to be about the game after that.
I think one thing that we kind of started to see with this game, maybe one of the benefits with Rondo is like the defensively the rotations are starting to get better, and that's maybe like Rondo just being able to shout at everyone and like being able to play with everyone, so everyone kind of, I guess that's kind of like with so many new additions, there's kind of like more communication, better communication. I think that's been getting better, even though like Toronto hit a load of threes. Quite a lot of those were contested, so that was more just kind of like teams are shooting a lot of threes against us, which is generally a sign that they've been open a lot, because you only take threes when you're open. There are some exceptions to that rule, like J.R. Smith, but for the most part, like how many threes you take is a kind of a sign of how many you're giving up. And I think we're giving up tougher threes now than we were early in the year. So I think that's a good sign, and maybe partly down to Rondo, like being able to tell everyone where the rotations are going and stuff like that. So hopefully that has like a benefit down the line.
Yeah, and also in this game, just real quick, I forgot, but because there was starting to be some concern from some Sacramento fans about Rudy Gay and if he was the right fit for this. He had a turnaround game.
And yeah, I think he just plays much better with Boogie on the floor, because he doesn't take it into his own hands, and doesn't try and take over the game. It may have been after the Toronto game, there was a really weird quote from him saying, it's like every game it's on me and DeMarcus to like win. And so I didn't really like that comment, just because like I don't think that's true. I think probably Gay is the hardest player to replace, but I'm not sure if he's the second best player on the team. I think like to find his his scoring ability is the hardest thing to find, though. But yeah, I don't like the hardest thing after Boogie, but I think Collison is a better player, personally, and more important to the Kings.
Yeah, I mean, I just chalk that up to his competitiveness and the wall that he wants to take
maybe
over.
And I guess you have to have that kind of mindset as well, of like he needs to think he has to play well, and that means he will play well, but at least it's like his game does change somewhat when Boogie's on the floor. I'd like to see him shoot more threes. Personally, I think he should be spotting up more, because he can hit them. Like, he is pretty good at shooting 3-pointers, and the fact I think he must be like averaging 2.8 a game or something like that. I think the last time I checked. So I think that should be up more, personally.
Yeah, in the month of November, he's at 2.6 per game.
But partly the issue with that is we don't really run much for getting open 3-point shots without off-ball motion, and he's just not athletic enough to like come off screens with space. Maybe when he's playing the 4, he can kind of take advantage of facing more limited athletes, and that's kind of where he needs to take his 3-pointers, not against wings. So maybe that's partly due to it, but we'll see. Because really, yeah, it's like Marcus Morris took 4 threes. He only hit 1, but I think I'd rather have the fact Gay and Caspi, or even Gay and Bellinelli combined this game took less threes than Cousins. Although Cousins hit more than both of them combined. I think in the long term you want Gay shooting more from the outside. And he shot 14 shots, so for only 2 of those to be 3-pointers, that's kind of disappointing for me.
Yeah, and just real quickly, Rondo also dropped another triple-double in this game.
Oh yeah, well that's a kind of a recurring theme of this week.
Yes.
Is there anything kind of lineup-wise that you stood out to you this game?
Just it was more fuel to the fire that Ben McLemore needed to be starting.
Yeah, he played only I think 3 minutes.
Oh, this was that. Yeah, I got it.
This was the game, but it was the last 3 minutes of the second half, and they were +3, and he forced I don't think it counted as a steal, but he kind of he disrupted the ball and then he hit it off his own leg, but basically in a transition situation. So he kind of made a big play. I don't know. I think Carl's reasons for him not playing were that Caspi was playing well, which he was, and Marco, so he just wanted to keep the guys that are playing well out there, which is fair enough to keep some continuity and ride the hot hand. So, and I think you can kind of trust that considering the amount Ben played the next couple of games, or obviously earned a starting spot. But yeah, I don't think there was anything. There was less chopping and changing this game, so maybe that's something that came from that team meeting where they're kind of reining in on every minute someone else subbing in. There's a bit more continuity.
Yeah. Now on to the next game, which was the Boogie game against Brooklyn.
Yeah, well, this was weird because they started really badly, and it was just the Boogie third quarter, and then it was over.
Yeah. So the big discussion here is just, so obviously we mentioned the first half, Boogie couldn't get anything going, and that's third quarter, 21 points, and then Carl took him out with a few minutes left. I'm not sure how much time was left. And there were reports that Boogie was pissed about it, furious. So just how did you feel about Carl's decision to pull Boogie out?
Considering he fouled out at the end of the game, I think it's fine. He had played, I think, the whole, almost 11 minutes. And because I think you get an extra time, the next stoppage in play before the quarter, there's a TV timeout, and then you obviously get the change of ends. So you do get kind of an extra 5 or so minutes of bench rest time by coming out just before the end of the quarter. And generally you make more mistakes when you're fatigued. So to me, it was fine. I guess they left him out just long enough going into the fourth quarter, because Brooklyn came back a bit, somewhat. But I can understand Boogie's frustration, but it's probably for the best for him. And then you can even see those last couple of minutes when Boogie fouled out, then it got really close again. So you would rather have Boogie for as long as you can in the fourth than for that extra minute in the third, is kind of my initial outcome, even though if Boogie at that very moment didn't particularly like it.
Yeah. I mean, I can understand why Boogie was pissed. I can understand why there would be fans who were angry. But listen, there's a minute left in the fourth quarter. I mean, he was in foul trouble. He should probably give him some time off, just rest a little bit, and then bring him back in the more crucial fourth quarter. When they did bring him back, the score was still close, so the bench and the starters did a good job. I mean, Kings led 89-87 with 8:29 to go. And he was able to play until he fouled out. And, yeah, so I think it was a good decision.
And like I think Ben played really well this game.
Yeah.
Like those transition assists were really good to see. He's making like good decisions, hitting open shots. So that's really impressive to see. And just like coming back, even though it was against a bad team, Boogie struggled against the size of Lopez. But I think this is one example where the tempo works in favor. It's like a big body gets tired and a bit slower as the game goes on, and I think that's one reason why kind of Boogie dominated later on. And Brooklyn basically tried to stick Lopez. I think that's maybe one reason why Boogie was kind of upset, because Lopez had just come out, so maybe Boogie felt he could have like those last couple of minutes against Thomas Robinson. Maybe he could take advantage. So maybe that's like another reason. Maybe he felt he had like a good matchup to go at. I think Quincy Acey had a really good game as well. Didn't really show up in the scoreboard, but like loads of energy, just like hustle plays, that big dunk. I think those kind of plays help when you're behind to get like energy as well. So I was impressed with him. It was interesting. Seth Curry only played 4 minutes, giving Rondo a little break. He wasn't really that aggressive, and I think Carl said they were going to try and play him when Shane Larkin was in. Shane Larkin played 14 minutes, or almost 15 minutes, so he could have felt he could have had played him a little bit more. But that seemed to be the next game as well, even though Seth hit a free, he only played around 4 minutes as well. So maybe that's kind of the limitation of trust for Seth Curry, is like to play a little spell beginning of the second quarter.
Yeah, go ahead.
I know you can go.
Oh, no, I just think that's, I mean, you mentioned 3-4 minutes. I think part of that was coming back from the injury and just it's the ankle that, I mean, he was supposed to be ready. It got where he aggravated it in practice. He missed more time. So I think part of that was just Rondo was playing well for the most of the game. And then Curry just wanted to limit his minutes. And they feared another aggravation given that they knew Collison was going to be out for a while.
Oh, that's like a really good point on the injuries. The team's being kind of really cautious with injuries, which is kind of a good sign. And in all the press conferences, Carl has basically, he always seems like he doesn't know what he's talking about with injuries. And I kind of like that, because to me, it basically means that he doesn't have the decision. It's all on the medical staff to decide when someone's ready. So we're seeing with like Darren Collison, they're being really vague. It sounds like he'll be playing tomorrow. But to me, that's like something good, where it's like the coach isn't like forcing guys back early. He's allowing like his staff to do their job. So I think that's one kind of good sign. Rondo and Boogie both hit 2 threes. It's just strange. Like Marco's, this game Marco, like he was gunning quite a lot. He's just not been hitting his shots, and it was a bit worse. I think the Raptors game, the fourth quarter, where when Cousins was out, just those possessions kind of died with the ball in his hands, or we kind of saw times where he was asked to play make, and just the offense kind of died, because he's generally the one doing all the off-ball movement. So when he has the ball in his hands, then kind of like everything else becomes really still. So I think we're kind of seeing some limitation, unless it's him with another shooter. I think him and Collison, you can play the ball more in his hands because you have kind of another perimeter threat, and someone off ball who can kind of come off screens fast and get open looks. But so maybe Bellinelli will be slightly more effective when Collison's back. I think he may be kind of one of the main beneficiaries of that. And this is kind of where we saw Caspi hit a funk as well, shooting. What did you take from Caron Butler playing so much? He started this game, didn't he, with James Anderson, and this was a game where Gay was out.
Yeah, Rudy Gay was he had basically the flu or something like that.
Yeah, like a stomach flu.
Yeah, so he was unable to play. Caron Butler, who Carl even put at the 4, I think that experiment came to an end very quickly. He has. I mean, I know he feel. Hold on. Yeah. All right. Sorry, I had someone calling. Anyways, so yeah, just with Caron Butler, I mean, he was thrown into a role he shouldn't be playing.
He was playing the 3. I don't think it's too bad, and with like.
I mean, like
minutes wise, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the good thing about him playing, I think Boogie after the game said that at halftime, Caron told him just to like keep going and he'll find his groove, and like so Boogie didn't drop his head. So I think Caron Butler was at least like quite a large hand in the game, even if he's pretty invisible when he's on the court. Just pretty much stands above the break. And defensively, he's like not really challenging anything, just kind of stays on his man. So I guess it's useful that he's getting a couple of minutes. And yeah, I think this may be the last we see of James Anderson. Well, hopefully anyway, because Ben really hasn't got injured much. And I think this was the game where Ben really like earned his job back, playing like 25 minutes. Hopefully he should be back at like playing 26 minutes. I think personally Ben should be playing more than Marco Bellinelli at this point. I think Marco's playing worse than Ben. And maybe the reason why Marco plays more is just because you have a little less playmaking with Collison out. And that's one thing the Kings kind of lack is wing playmakers. So maybe that's something like I don't really think there's a trade this team can make, but maybe going into next year that's going to be kind of a position they need to look at as someone who can create at either the 2 or 3. Was there anything else you kind of took from this game? I think this is one time where the Kings kind of adjusted their defensive plan more so than we've seen. So I guess that was a good sign. Like they kind of stopped Jack in the 4th quarter, and they stopped. They kind of like Joe Johnson just went off at the end, but other than that, they kind of like slowed everyone down. Especially that last bench unit for Brooklyn, they completely got destroyed.
Yeah. I mean, just real quickly in this game, because Willie Cauley-Stein made the play at the end to tip the ball away.
Oh yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
And credit to Kufos on that play as well, because he switched. So he told Willie to go out on the perimeter. So that's like a heads-up play by Kufos as well.
True. Yeah.
So that's kind of, and that's like good for like players to be willing to get like to understand like other players' strengths and put them in the right position, especially where he's like just a little baby deer bouncing around.
Yeah.
And Rondo made that play before as well to force the ball out of bounds. But really, it shouldn't have been that close at the end. I guess if you wanted to nitpick. Should we move on to the Raptors game, the other comeback victory, the Rudy Gay trades game?
Yeah.
I really thought they were going to lose this game in the 4th quarter. I think there was so many. I think Rondo, this was his worst game. So many turnovers, and yeah, somehow I think he had like 15 turnovers. So that's kind of an issue. 14. Oh wait, I only got him at 6. I thought he had way more than that. So maybe this box score is wrong. But yeah, there's a lot of turnovers, and it was surprising they won. I think it helped they won the board battle, because that's kind of where Brooklyn has kind of dominated. Also, like, oh no, not Brooklyn, Toronto. They also didn't play Valanciunas at all after the second, halfway through the third quarter. So I think that kind of like just bad coaching helped. And kind of what let the Kings back in was that spell they had to rest Kyle Lowry in the fourth quarter, and then DeRozan became the lead ball handler, and that started like the spell where they couldn't score at all. And that kind of swung the momentum, and then Lowry can really control the game after that. And they went on that, was it like an 18 or 16 nil run to end the game? So that was really impressive, because I think Toronto, they've got some good lineups. I don't think they were in most of them for the game. And it kind of helped DeMarre Carroll's coming off, or like kind of nicked up a bit. Although he played a lot, I think he played the most minutes. But he didn't look his self. So maybe that kind of helped. But yeah, Boogie played a lot, 41 minutes, so almost as much as Rondo. So that's pretty impressive for a big guy. And I think, yeah, Ben again played a really good game. I was surprised it took so long to put him in the fourth, just because he was so good. And when they did put him in, that last, I think, 5 or 6 minutes, they were plus 12. So after being like plus 4 for like the 8 minutes before as a unit. And so him coming on for Caspi, I think, was like the move that sealed the game, and not ending small as well. I think that's they should try and end with Gay at the 4 as much as they can, which they did pretty much for like the last 10 minutes of this game. So that's kind of a good sign. Especially, I guess that's like when we were talking about lineups coming into the year, that was kind of like all the lineups chasing games were Gay at the 4, and the other ones kind of defending with Willie at the 4. So it's good to see we were kind of like, that's the intention. Did you have any thoughts from this other than just Boogie being incredible again?
I mean, Boogie was incredible. Let's see, what else I had on my mind. Actually, I was surprised looking at just play-by-play wise, is that really Kings started coming, and it was later than I thought, because Toronto kept Lowry out of the game for about a 6-minute chunk, which was
because he had played pretty much from like the middle of the second quarter, like non-stop until then.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. Corey Joseph played quite a bit as well, but they played Corey Joseph from the halfway of the third quarter way to the end. So maybe they just don't trust him as the primary ball handler, but kind of to defend more. But yeah, it's just interesting to have like a second point guard, but then have your primary point guard play so many minutes, and like take him out at such a weird time. I guess they were up 10, so maybe they felt comfortable, but they probably shouldn't have, given the result. There was a big swing at the end. I think that was the most impressive game for me so far, in terms of like, I literally thought the game was over. So yeah, that's like when you completely think the game's over and then you win. That's like pretty impressive, and just shows kind of like the resilience and like, I don't think Boogie's lying when he says like he trusts everyone in the room, because we've seen like Boogie give up on games like this before, when he like thinks they can't win. So that's like another, I guess, good like sign.
Yeah, and the other thing I liked is in this game we saw probably the best starting lineup Kings are going to have this year, with Boogie, Gay, Cauley-Stein, Rondo, McLemore. I'm really just glad.
Was that the opening day? Oh, that was what we thought would be the opening day, but then Kufo started because of the matchup. I think in like a vacuum, Collison is a better starting point guard, but I think you kind of have to start Rondo.
Yeah.
And so like that's just kind of like for an overall team cohesion. It's probably the lineup I like the most. But not the one it ends with. I still think you should end games with Collison. But maybe we see him end games with Rondo, Collison, and McLemore, Gay at the 4, and then Cousins. I think that could work as well, depending. I guess maybe it can't work against teams like Golden State Warriors, just because of Clay. That matchup, he will just post up Collison, or maybe you can put Rondo on Clay. Maybe that could work. But yeah, I think this is like the closest to it. So it's good news about Willie anyway, and I guess that's just like the nice sign of depth as well. That, and this, I guess they didn't even play Kufos that much, 13 minutes. So like Quincy AC was like really the second big this game, but they played again so much small ball, which is nice to see, and I think it fits better. Maybe it helped Gay coming back from a couple of days rest. And he had a pretty good game, Gay, I thought. And Crazy plays 37 minutes after missing a game. Was there any other kind of thoughts? What did you think of Rondo's game? Because I thought it was pretty bad.
I'll say I'm glad that Collison's likely coming back soon so we can cut down on Rondo's minutes.
Yeah, I think it'll probably be helpful in the long term, just in terms of him getting kind of chemistry with, like, it's almost been like an intense training camp for him. So now he knows kind of everyone's game, and probably given him like some pretty good like standing in terms of locker room and respect. I think he's like the leader of the team now, which probably helps Boogie as well, where Boogie like doesn't need to be like vocal as much, because I don't really think that's his like nature, leading, like he's a leader by example, whereas I think Rondo is kind of like a teacher. There were some really interesting quotes from both Boogie and Bellinelli after the game as well. Like Boogie was saying stuff about how like he's really proud of Ben, and he like couldn't go into details on it. And then like Marco kind of offered up himself, just saying how he's proud of Ben. So there's obviously something that's kind of gone on there, whether it's like Carl, but obviously like maybe the benching, maybe that was like more a thing than Carl made it out to be. And if it is, that's like good as well, that Carl's doing stuff behind closed doors and not through the media, which seems to be kind of some of the bone of contention that led to the meeting. So yeah, I just thought those were kind of some interesting notes to, there's obviously like something there. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. Should we move on to next week's games, or is there anything else? I can't really think of anything else that was like particularly standing out, other than like I think everyone's had like some bad games and everyone's had some good games, which is like good to see.
Yeah. And just as of now, for the people who said that, I mean, it's early. There's been a 1-7 stretch and now a 3-game winning streak. For the people who said either Rondo or Cousins are going to kill each other, it hasn't happened yet.
I think that they seem like best friends.
They're cut from the same cloth.
And what's really interesting is like Cousins loves talking about other players on the team, and he almost hates talking about himself and his own performance.
Actually, I like
really
that you brought that up, because watching the post game, they're asking about his game, and he said, I'm just glad we got the win. And then I think he was talking about, they were talking about Rondo, and you could see his face light up, and it was just sometimes you're in awe watching, which is so much fun.
And he's even like that when I think it was James Ham asked him about Drummond, and then like he went into talking about him. So he's like, I think he's just, maybe it's just like a modesty or something, or just like doesn't feel like he's like doesn't want to say what he wants to say because of the way it may come off. but yeah, he looks much happier talking about other players on the team, and I think that's a good sign as well, just in terms of like what he thinks about like the quality of the roster around him.
Yeah. And one more thing I just wanted to throw out on Boogie, Carmichael Dave mentioned this, is so in Sacramento area there was Grant High School football team, one of their players unfortunately was killed this past week, and DeMarcus Cousins, who attends some Grant games, paid for their funeral and the services. So that's a good dude.
And he does lots of like stuff for animal charities and lots of children's charities. Like his camp like gave every camper like prescription glasses and stuff if they needed them. So he does like so many cool things. It's just interesting like how everyone calls him a problem, but then like Gerald Green like is doing way worse stuff, and no one really talks about how much of an issue he is. Obviously, there's like a talent change, but yeah, it's just interesting how media perception, like there's pretty respected people just saying like, I don't think you can win with Boogie. And it's just like, just because you haven't won doesn't mean you can't.
And just real quick, what I think people fail to understand is part of the reason you see all that emotion and the anger is he's been on a losing team for years now. He is as competitive as they come, and after all the coaches and stuff, all the potential relocation talk, all the things he's been through, yeah, he's kind of pissed. Who wouldn't be when you have that type of competitive mentality?
And probably like the relocation stuff maybe like attaches him more to the city and like, oh, these guys didn't quit, so I'm not going to quit on them type thing. So maybe kind of helps as well. Just kind of like resonate more. But anyway, I think we'll get. He's obviously. I don't think he's going anywhere.
No.
As much as ESPN Trade Machine may love him too. Anyway, so we won't do any Boogie rumors sponsored by the Trade Machine. Should we move on to the schedule? Is there 4 games this week? It's the Hornets game Monday.
It's a 4. Just from now until next episode, 4-game road trip, and then really it's a 5-game road trip, but 4 while we're away. The podcast, yeah.
So we should start with the Hawks. Then they're playing tonight, I believe. So they'll
Wednesday.
be on a back. So they'll be on a back-to-back.
Yeah.
They'll be on the back end, but then the Kings will, and they're in Brooklyn, so it's away home back-to-back. So that's kind of an advantage for the Kings. I think the Kings arrived kind of around a couple of hours ago in Atlanta, so they'll be more rested at least. But then they kind of have the disadvantage of going into Miami. So I don't know what's worse, like leaving New York to go to Atlanta the night before, or leaving Atlanta to go to Miami. Probably both have a dangerous cocktail involved in there somewhere.
Yeah.
I guess the biggest thing will be is if Jeff Teague is playing or not. He's not playing tonight against the Nets, so you would assume he won't. I think he's got an ankle injury.
Yeah, he's missed past 2 games.
Okay, so and they've lost the last 2 games as well, so that kind of hurts them because like Dennis Schroeder, I really like him, but he kind of runs hot and cold. And then they're also missing Kent Bazemore, who had a really great start to the season. I think he's pretty much definitely out. But he was starting, so that kind of pushes Cephalosha to start, and maybe they have to like play Tim Hardaway more. As Korver, he's been kind of having on and off. I think he's been playing, but I'm not sure they want to give him like big minutes at the moment. So that kind of helps as well. It'll be kind of fun to watch him and Bellinelli chase after each other, because generally like the players that can kind of run off the ball and run around, they're generally the best at like defending those types of players. So that kind of helps in terms of like, I think that'll be kind of a fun matchup. I just see. So it looks like he has been playing. He missed some games earlier in the season, but he's been playing kind of 30 minutes. So I guess we will see him, and he's shooting relatively well. but not like last year.
Yeah.
So I guess that'd be. Is there anything? I guess like this is one game where I think this will be a recurring theme. I don't really know how they can stop Boogie. So that kind of helps.
Yeah.
Is there anything? I guess like this is like the team where it's like the ball movement can beat you. So it's just kind of like.
Yeah. Just in terms of Atlanta, I mean, in case Teague and Bazemore aren't able to play tonight, they're trotting out a lineup with where is it? With Schroeder, Corver, Millsap, Horford, and Thiago Splitter.
Oh wow, that's actually quite fun.
Yeah.
And then the Kings kind of match up nicely with that though. If you have Gay at the 3, because then you're basically both teams are going big, and then so that's almost like Gay is getting a 4 matchup, but you still have Willie Cauley-Stein to play Millsap, so that's kind of nice. So I don't actually hate that in terms of like how it matches up with the Kings, and then I think Boogie can kill Splitter, so that kind of works nicely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Bazemore's like a pretty big hit for them. I don't think he's playing. I think he's out indefinitely, so I'll be surprised if he was back. Whereas I think they might be a bit more optimistic with Jeff Teague. Is there anything? I guess they're just like another team like the Spurs, where it's like it's not. It's. I think it helps if they're like on demand, because it kind of changes up the chemistry somewhat, mixing it up. And then yeah, it's just whether you get Schroeder on a hot day. And it'd be interesting because I know he was kind of the Kings were linked to Schroeder in the offseason. Must have been like some sort of trade rumor, but the Sacramento Bee were kind of talking about him a lot. So whether we see kind of like him on a good game or not will be kind of interesting after those rumors. And then depth-wise, I think we've got kind of a better bench. But that's interesting. They're not playing Cephalosha at the 3 in there. So it'll be an interesting game at least to watch today. I might try and catch some of that with college hoops. Should we move on to the next game against the Heat?
Yeah.
So the Hassan Whiteside game, I guess. Boogie normally kills Hassan Whiteside, so and the fact that Boogie can hit threes, this is like the perfect time because the Heat have kind of changed their scheme where they just have Whiteside sit back. They're not like blitzing or double teaming on the pick and roll anymore. So they just kind of let Whiteside camp down. But if you have a stretch 5, you're bringing him out and then you kind of open up the lane a bit more. So that's kind of nice. This would be another game. I guess Willie he matches up pretty well against Chris Bosh in terms of like can meet him out on the perimeter, but then also like still crash down into the paint. I think that's like the one advantage with Willie against like stretch 4s is like he can affect both the perimeter and the paint like almost at the same time. And I guess like the Dragic you would say is like their second best player, but he's really not playing very well at the moment, not finishing well in the paint. But defensively they've been really good, but I just don't know if they can really stop how the Kings play. They're second in defensive rating. So that's pretty impressive for changing scheme. And they beat Utah the other day, and so they got a pretty big gap. I think they're playing Minnesota. They play Minnesota today, I think. So maybe that's another game to watch where, like, you get to see kind of how Hassan Whiteside plays against a center that has a bit more range in Karl Anthony Towns. So maybe that's kind of like a good kind of primer to see how that matchup looks. Have you got any other thoughts on the Heat?
The one thing I will be interested in is with Darren Collison. If he's able to play Wednesday, it will be a back-to-back, so I don't know if they'll How
Yeah,
about
that's a really good
93
point.
minutes?
Maybe they kind of, maybe it's like see how each game goes. I guess with if Teague's not playing, then you can maybe limit the minutes more against the Hawks, just because he's going to be playing against or you have inferior secondary point guard, so maybe you can play Seth Curry more that game and get away with it. So I think it's just like picking times when you can get away with Seth on the floor and it not hurting you defensively. So maybe that's kind of one instance. Maybe you only see Darren Collison in like the second half or something like that. So yeah, but that's a really good point. I guess with like, yeah, there's always a risk like cascade injuries. So I guess that's like one kind of thing. But then like the Heat really don't have, I guess Tyler Johnson's their secondary ball handler, and he's really athletic and gives kind of like a size issue. Oh, they got Bino Udry now as well. I don't know if he's played since that trade, but I guess that'll be kind of like he's a really good pick and pop guy. So it'll be interesting how much because that's been one area where Kuzos, he's getting better, but he has kind of struggled early on is those pick and pop rotations closing out on the guard when they switch. So maybe this could be a game where you see, although Dragic is kind of like the same risk, so maybe it'll be interesting kind of how much they try and play Willie to take that away, because I think that bench unit, that's going to be kind of their main offense is Bino in the mid-range. And Winslow's been looking really good. I really liked him coming out. He looks pretty good. So I think that Winslow, Rudy Gay matchup, or if it'll be Rudy and Dang or whoever, I think those are tough matchups for Rudy. Especially as like, I think Rudy's now looking more like a 4, but I think Winslow can even defend 4s because of his length. But maybe that's like a guy Rudy tries to post up more and kind of show him some vet moves. Should move. Is there anything else you want to, or should move on to the?
Just in terms of this game, I'm looking through Miami's schedule. That obviously Boogie's one of the best offense big men in the game, and I mean Miami hasn't really played anyone close to. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. So that could kind of like show why, because Whiteside's really good with guys driving into the lane. But yeah, we've seen Boogie give him real trouble in terms of like foul trouble early on in games. So maybe that's going to be like one thing where you want to have maybe put the ball in Boogie in the post and like get Whiteside in foul trouble early on, and then you can like drive into the paint more. So yeah, that'll be interesting. And because like Boogie obviously knows Whiteside's game so well from when he was a rookie, so.
All right, so move on to the next game. Okay. Yeah.
So the Magic is the next game, right?
Yep. It will be Miami, and then they have a day off, and then they'll go to Orlando.
So that could be risky. A couple of spare nights in Miami. So maybe I have to make sure guys are well behaved. Guys, Eric Moreland can go doing the partying for the team. I think he's got it in him. Do you know much about Oladipo's concussion, whether he's going to be playing or not? Because I think he's like their X factor for them.
Yeah, I'm looking that up now. And just real quickly, James Anderson doesn't have a role on this team anymore, so he can also go out and party.
Oh, yeah. Well, you never know those like last 5 minutes when we blow them out. Maybe he can sweat it out then. It's a good time to sweat out the booze.
Yeah, and according to writer for Orlando Magic writer John Denton, Coach Scott Skiles said Oladipo has been cleared to use stationary bike, jogging, non-contact work. Could be cleared for Wednesday's game, so I think we probably will see him.
Okay. Yeah, so that's like kind of far away. They've only got one game before Sacramento, also against Minnesota. So it looks like the Kings and Minnesota are going on like a similar little road trip. But yeah, Oladipo I think kind of changes everything. They've been much better when Alfred Payton's been off the floor in like plus minus. Although I like Payton, I think he kind of has the same effect as Rondo, but But Rondo's been kind of hitting those shots more. But I do really like Payton. The Magic have been really impressive so far. There's a lot of games they've lost that they probably shouldn't have. But it's just whether they just seem to have, they're almost like the Kings in terms of they haven't really found their rotations. Evan Fournier's been incredible. I think he's had a fever, but I think I would assume he'll be better by then. And that's kind of their only real injuries. Hazonia's kind of he's had like some flashes, but struggled a bit. But I think he could be kind of like an X factor. This is a game where maybe you could play Gay at the 4 as well against Tobias Harris or Aaron Gordon. I think those are kind of good matchups for him defensively, where he can kind of take them out of their game. And then I just like Vucevic can't stop Boogie. Dedmon could maybe, with his length, can give him some problems, but he's not really that advanced as a player yet, where I think Boogie can just take advantage of him. And they're going to they're making quite a few like mistakes defensively, especially in the clutch early on. But I think that's maybe rotation based. So I think there's still a team that's like not necessarily wanting to win, but like wanting to lose well. So we'll just see kind of what if they end games with Vucevic, Hazonia, Tobias Harris like they did early in the season, then I think that's kind of a sign that you're not trying to win, personally. But we'll see. Have you got any thoughts on them?
Just looking up now, Boogie's last games against Orlando, he put up 29 and 12 last year in one game. And 2 years before that, he had 24 and 12. So the numbers are there. Actually, you know what? That would be 24 and 16 rebounds per game in 2 games last year against Orlando.
It'll be interesting kind of what his rebound numbers will stay like, because obviously he's probably going to get less offensive boards, not being kind of the big closest to the baskets in quite a lot of possessions, playing more at the elbow. So maybe that's kind of something that goes down. He's been I think he's been averaging 11 or something. So whereas I think the year before he was like up at the 13s, like the top 5, where he's like top 10. But with Willie Cauley-Stein and Kufos both being able to rebound, and also Rondo being able to rebound as well, I think you can kind of, it's not as important. But that's, I think, one thing to note, whereas in terms of like that counting stat maybe is less important to look at, and we might see a decline just because of the use. But yeah, I think Vucevic is definitely like a guy he can go at. So that'll be interesting. And yeah, just it's going to be like, can they stop Fournier, who's on like, he's been really impressive, especially like driving in the lane. He's been really good, and he's like pretty strong. He's actually, I think he's entering a contract year, so, and they didn't give him a contract extension, so he might even be like a guy that, like looking forward to next year, the Kings might be interested in going after, because it's just like can shoot, get to the rim. It's like things that Carl likes, and you can maybe play. We've seen like Ben playing at the 3, and even Marco playing at the 3. So I think like Fournier would fit, and like you may just have to overpay him, but this might be a year where the Kings just have to, like, whilst everyone's chasing KD, to like go after someone. And I think he was a Nuggets draft pick when Carl was there, so there's another little connection. And he's been playing more at the 3 this year, obviously starting at the 3 with Oladipo at the 2. And he like offers some playmaking as well, so he kind of fits what the Kings kind of need. So that's already looking ahead to next year. But I think it would be an interesting addition.
Yeah. And then just real quickly, I mean, on Oladipo, So obviously he might play Wednesday. But I mean, one thing, concussions, we've seen that sometimes there can be lingering symptoms. So he could play Wednesday and possibly he has a setback or something. So it's possible that maybe he does
Yeah,
miss.
concussion protocols traditionally like 5 to 7 days, depending on the medical stuff. So,
And then
I'm not too optimistic.
Fournier has a team option for 2016.
Oh, does he? I thought they declined that.
They did?
Yeah.
Oh.
I think it's like the draft pick, because he's a first round pick. You can pick up or you can extend him because this is his 4th year. So I believe he's a free agent because they didn't pick it up. But we'll see. I might be wrong. I think he had like his big game after they didn't take up his.
Yeah, you're right. I think, yeah.
Should we move on to the Hornets?
Yeah.
I think that Magic game should be really fun though. I think that's the one I'm kind of looking for, because that's like a team they should really beat. But I think they could like hit hot and then like do pretty well. And like, yeah, I think it might just be close. And then obviously just kind of like being the 3rd game on a road trip, if like one of those 2 games are 4 or like that back-to-back doesn't go well, then it could be kind of a pivotal game on the road trip. But we'll go to the Hornets. So obviously NKG is out, but I think they've been much better than I thought they would be without him defensively. They're kind of middle of the pack defensively, but I thought they'd be much worse. And somehow they're 8th offensively. Nicola Batum's been playing incredible. He's another guy I would target. He'll be a free agent as well, and he can like play anywhere from the 2 to the 4. It's like another guy. I think he was the Eastern Conference Player of the Week, and Boogie was Western Conference Player of the Week. Yeah, he's been really good. So it's going to be, and he's like another guy who can like take away whoever's hot on the perimeter for the Kings. So whether if Gay gets into like a rhythm, he can really affect him. He's like 6'8", and I think he's got like a 7'1" wingspan. And like if Ben or Bellinelli moving off ball, he can just smother them. So that'd be kind of interesting to watch. Jeremy Lamb's been playing pretty well as well, who they got for basically nothing and give it an extension. So those I think are going to be the kind of guys to worry about. Al Jefferson's been playing really well as well. But I think I'm pretty confident in the way in which the Kings can defend kind of post players. It's more maybe his jump shooting, and maybe that could be where Frank Kaminsky maybe hurts him slightly. He's been shooting pretty well from outside, although not a huge amount. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I think it's going to be taking away those perimeter guys. I think Batum's like shooting over 40% on like 50 attempts. Jeremy Lamb's shooting just under 40% and just under 40 attempts. So, and the Kings have been giving up lots of perimeter shots. This may, I guess, like another advantage. Something we didn't talk about Toronto is like the way they play their offense with being so slow into the offensive sets really helps the Kings, because the kind of issues being always like getting set defensively. So Toronto gave them so much time to communicate and get in position. And the Hornets are pretty down there in pace. They're 18th. So they're another team that like takes a while to get set, and that plays into the Kings' advantage defensively, where they've been struggling getting everyone in position. So I kind of like the Kings in that kind of terms. Is there anything that stands out to you?
Really, I'm just hoping they don't leave Batum and Lamb open for 3. If we can avoid that, I'll be happy.
Yeah, it's kind of like a game you might not want to switch as much, but I don't think they'll change that. But yeah, maybe because we have seen Kyle try and take away like the main threats. So whether hopefully we've seen kind of like Ben help off the perimeter a lot to try and strip. So if he's on Lamb, maybe you don't want to do that so much. and like especially as Al Jefferson really doesn't turn over the ball that much, and he's a pretty good passer, so he's not really someone you really want to double team just because he can make more out of it. Yeah, he's had like 7 turnovers and 19 assists, which is incredible for a big man. That gets doubled so often. So yeah, I think he'll be definitely a guy. I think that I would not really want to double and just see if he can beat whoever's guarding him one-on-one, which he may do, but like it's better to give up like a 2 than an open 3 to guys that are shooting. Even though it still gets me that the whole team's offense is about getting open threes. Although the Kings don't shoot a huge amount of threes, but then they're willing to give them up. So, but maybe the rotations get crisper and we see less open looks from the corners.
Yeah. And just one thing on this, for Charlotte, just I was looking at, they have not played a top 10 team in pace since this year.
Okay, that's interesting. So the Kings are second at the moment, I believe.
Yeah, Kings are second. Yeah, so Charlotte's played, just recently, Portland, Chicago, New York Knicks, Minnesota. So interesting to see what they do or how.
And like the Heat and Magic games could be quite high tempo. So that'd be kind of interesting. Obviously, although like the Heat are kind of interesting in terms of like they've kind of got half the guys that should run, half the guys that should slow it down. So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of goes. But yeah, it should be fun slate of games. Should we do predictions? As we were awful with week 2 predictions, or we were like overly positive, then we were overly pessimistic. The last 3 games, I think we both said 2-1.
I said 3-0. I nailed it.
You said okay. You said 3-1. Oh, okay. We'll have to go back and listen to that. I think I said 2-1 then.
Yeah.
All right. So you're winning so far, and I think the other ones we were way too optimistic, or we just there's so much which we didn't know.
Yeah.
So I do you want to go first? What I think? I'm always bad at predictions.
I'm gonna say 3-1 on this trip. The 3-1.
Which game do you think they drop?
As of now, I'll say Atlanta.
That's kind of like I was going to say 3-1 as well, but then Atlanta are coming off a back-to-back, and I doubt they're going to have Teague, or if they do have Teague, he's going to be.
Yeah. Teague's the hinge one for me. If they're without him, then
I might go 4-0 and maybe the Heat game is the one that they struggle with, just because it's a back-to-back, and the Kings have a tendency to get guys back into rhythm. So maybe we see Dragic open up. Although I think Rondo's been relatively good defensively, and they've been scheming quite well to take away point guards. That we saw kind of with Steph Curry, and with the Pistons game as well. They've done well and even to a certain degree against Chris Paul earlier in the year, they did pretty well to like maintain point guard production. So maybe that's kind of a game where they can help. And then I'll go 4-0 because I think all these teams, other than the Hawks, and this is why the Hawks are the interesting one, all the other teams they kind of rely on or can fall into like one-on-ones to win games, whereas the Hawks ball movement, I think if any team that goes one-on-one with the Kings, like I think the Kings can win that. I think that's what we saw with the Toronto game in particular. Is like DeRozan started going to ISO, and the Kings would take away his strength and then make him take bad shots. So I think they're relatively well. I think the Kings are pretty well coached in terms of like defensively knowing what to take away. If it does get into isolation, it's just when the ball moves around, they're just a bit too slow on their rotation. So that's maybe why the Hawks is like the worst matchup. But then that you're getting the Hawks on the best kind of scenario. So screw it, I'll go 4-0. They'll probably lose to the Bucks though. Yeah, I'm going 4-0, and we'll be, what would that make us? 8-7. So it'll be over 500.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I mean, because remember, we're gonna look back on this, and if they go 4-0, I'm gonna bring back the RELAX.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and it's
that'd be a 7-0 run. That would be pretty incredible.
yeah.
Should we just look at where we're at the standings as well?
Yeah, I was pulling that up right now.
Okay, because the West is really interesting. It's like a load of teams that got off to a fast start have slowed down. So the Timberwolves are on a 4-game losing streak. The Trailblazers have dropped 6 in a row. The Rockets have dropped 4 in a row. So the Kings are all around those teams. The Jazz, Nuggets, Grizzlies. The Thunder have even dropped 2 with Durant being out. So I mean, and just like the Pelicans keep losing. So the Kings are in a pretty good spot in terms of no one's really pulling away. And so if they can kind of take advantage of this East trip, and what are the Kings unbeaten against the East?
Let's check. They are. Yes. Yes,
So
they
unbeaten against the East, so that's a good sign. So they're 3-0 against the East, 1-7. Although that win against the Lakers, I don't think really counts as a basketball game, but we'll see.
Yeah. And just one more question, actually. So one thing we mentioned on schedule is some of the teams Kings are playing. I mean, Atlanta, Miami, Orlando. How are they going to defend a Boogie? What type of how well do you think he does this week?
I guess if I'm saying they're going to win 4 games, he's got to be pretty good. I don't think he has to put up the same numbers. Hopefully, Collison coming back means he can rest a bit more, just because you get that bit more playmaking and scoring. So maybe he doesn't score as much, and hopefully he's not as I wouldn't say dependent on the 3-point shot, but like not needing to take 5 a game. Although he doesn't need to. He's getting good looks and taking them, and I guess that's what you want from a shooter, is want them to shoot in rhythm. It's just pretty funny talking about DeMarcus Cousins as a shooter, but I guess that's what he is now. So I think I think maybe like him playing these big minutes will get him into shape quicker as well. And then so it'll be interesting. I think he'll probably fare pretty well, but maybe not put up the same counting stats as he has.
Yeah.
And that's how many. I think this is only the second time he's won Western Conference Player of the Week. How many do you think he wins this year? Because I think if he keeps playing like this, and like I think he will be in the MVP conversation, because he literally like just won a game all by himself pretty much.
Yeah.
It was pretty impressive. And like even defensively, he has like blocking shots and taking charges. And there's been like really bad calls against the Kings as well. The game where he fouled out, there was like an awful charge call on him. Some pretty bad calls. But he's been taking it relatively well. It's been he's probably taken being subbed out the worst of anything. So that was pretty good.
What else? What is that?
I mean, the Kings are beaten. Like even if the Eastern Conference teams they've beaten, like the Raptors have won 7. I mean, that's a pretty good win. The Pistons were looking good until they've gone on like a 4-game losing streak. But I mean, the Hawks have lost 2, so I think they're all playing the Hawks at a good time. The Heat, not so much. They've kind of hit a stride somewhat. And then with the Magic and the Hornets, they're both kind of hovering around 500. So it's maybe a game you'd like to win. They've both won more games at home as well, so that's maybe something to look at. And strangely, the Magic have beaten 3 Western Conference teams. So something of interest to note, I guess. I probably wouldn't have expected that at the beginning of the year, although I think like there's a bit more parity between the conferences, at least early on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the Hawks is definitely, if they don't have Teague, I think that's going to be really good for the Kings. And it would be kind of like a win you wouldn't expect, like going into their home. Although strangely they've been playing better away. They're 4-3 at home, so maybe. I don't know. Last year there was quite a lot of articles about there not really being a road or home advantage anymore. But then it's still interesting how people talk about home advantage so much once it gets to playoffs. So there's a contradiction. It's like the last part of the season, all you'll hear about is who's getting a top 4 seed. But then during the season, people talk about how the importance of home games has decreased. So who knows? I guess you've got to talk about something.
Yeah. And then just 2 quick notes. Obviously, the game's far away, but PJ Harrison, like expected to miss extended time. So he may not be available for the Kings game. And then, just because I'm on Bleacher Report right now, there's a video. Rick Bucher, Ronadive could make Calipari offer he can't refuse.
There's been, I think it was Sam Amick was saying, he was talking to people inside the Kings, and they were saying that the Calipari stuff's all just white noise, and it's nothing. So, and Amick's like a Sacramento local, so I'd probably take his word over Bleacher Report. Yeah. But the Bucks, who will be playing next week, it sounds like Jabari Park will be missing that game. So that kind of helps as well. Although he's still coming off that injury, he's making like a couple of bouncy plays. And then that Timberwolves game should be fun. And then there's going to be, I think that next week's going to be really interesting with Timberwolves, Warriors again, and the Mavs. The Mavs have been better than I thought, but I don't think they can. I'm not sure if they're that good. So we'll see. But it should be like an interesting couple of games. And hopefully the winning streak continues.
Yeah. All right. So I think we what do you think? We covered everything we need to for this week?
Yeah, I think there's probably some things that I wanted to say, but I can't remember them. I should really prepare. Anyway, we'll watch. They've been really fun games to watch, even though I was pretty down like that last half of the Raptors game, like that. So and it's just fun. It's really fun when the Kings are good. They're like a really fun team to watch, so it's nice.
Well, yeah, as I was talking to a new follower on Twitter a few days ago, it was sad and strange that the Kings are uplifting me as I deal with the Green Bay Packers.
I'm same boat. It's like I was completely dead inside for the Dolphins Eagles game, even though it was like a 1-point win, and then like heart was racing, sweating for the Toronto like a Kings game. So it's not used to like not caring about Dolphin games in the first 3 weeks of the NBA season, but that's what happens when you fire a coach after a month. So don't do it, Kings. This time, don't do it. Somehow my teams just mirror each other and have to have carnage. So yeah, maybe this time try not firing the coach for once. It might work.
That's a bold strategy.
Yeah. Oh, it's just interesting with like all the should the Kings are a mess. Should they trade Boogie? Boogie can't win. All of them have to state how many head coaches have gone through Sacramento. It's like maybe before you trade him or dismiss him, you like try and not fire people, and you just like yeah, it might be worth a try, just for once, 'cause you're not gaining anything firing anyone now. You're just throwing away another year.
Yeah, well, and also what was fun about those articles is 2 days later the titles would change too. Never mind.
I know
Never mind.
they're a bit slower to adjust, so they'll wait. 'Cause, yeah, I only saw like briefly on like the power rankings come through on the Monday, but I think they're still kind of in the mid-20s, so they haven't adjusted yet, which is fair as well.
Yeah.
They've had like 3 Eastern teams at home, so but maybe this week you see the adjustment and kind of like the teams that came out hot fall back, like the Blazers. If the Rockets still struggle, the Timberwolves are struggling. So kind of like the teams that came out hot that no one expected, like teams are adjusting to them. So I think you kind of see now, and that's kind of maybe how the Kings were last year, although it's a bit different with Boogie being hurt or like having meningitis. But it's just interesting, like you're not hearing all this stuff about the Pelicans, and it's incredible that Tyreek is like their Boogie. It's like for the Kings to lose with Boogie out, like I think that's kind of fair. But the Pelicans have Anthony Davis and are losing. So it's just interesting you can't win with Boogie, but you can win with Anthony Davis, although he needs Tyreek Evans. I don't know. It's just interesting, like how the narrative is swayed because of personality or people's opinions, like built-in ones. So it's like if Anthony Davis can't win when he hasn't got talent around him, maybe it's hard to win without talent around you.
Yeah, I always did enjoy that DeMarcus Cousins stuff about how, well, his teammates have gone on to be part of playoff teams. Yeah, that's because they're not the one doing the work.
Yeah. But I mean, this team would be fun if they still had Isaiah Thomas and Tyreek, and you could make a good team with their draft picks. They had Hassan Whiteside, Boogie, Isaiah Thomas, Tyreek Evans. That's maybe a fun team. Ben McLemore.
Yeah.
Maybe a fun team. But, oh well. No time.
Right. For another time, yeah.
Yeah. That's a conversation for 2K.
Yeah. And I just do want to say thank you to everyone, whoever was listening. Much appreciated. Because mostly we're just coming on here talking to ourselves about Sacramento Kings. So if you were listening, thank you.
There's at least 5 of you, maybe. Whether you get this far or not, we'll see.
Yeah, it's okay. Our friends and family don't listen either, so we understand.
This is the funnest thing I do all week.
Yeah, and also to my new 500 followers for that one thing. Hello, and I'm sorry that I'm gonna disappoint you with the next month.
And don't follow me.
Yeah.
Please don't follow me. I like having quiet mentions.
Yeah. All right. So I think that wraps up this episode of the Sac Off podcast. We will be back next week. I will be in a different location. #house sitting. So it's going to be fun.
And hopefully it won't be frozen over in England. Oh. We'll see.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get rid of the rats. All right. Goodbye.